when we get to the 6-3, we get to a very unusual profile because, after all, it is the end of the process. And in being the end of the process, everything about human design, the incarnation index, the knowledge that was given to me by the voice, it's all logical and it's all based on a fundamental binary program. So there is magic in the numbers. Many of you already know that there is a deep magic in numbers. And what I like so much about the profile is that it begins with the 1-3. But when you get to the very top, you get to the 6-3. And what you're looking at is that third line, that is the continuity from the beginning to the end. On the surface, you have this movement from the 1 to the 6. The personality has moved through its whole process. It's gone through the 6 variations of personality. But this movement from the unconscious base to the top of the ladder, that the consistent theme is the 3. You see the magic of the 3. It is this magic that makes the 6 possible, because the 3 is the great mutative force. It is the evolutionary force. It is the trial and error. And no hexagram stops with the roof. It can't. It is the 6-3s who endlessly teach us because they're absolutely helpless in it. They're constantly being dragged down off of the roof. They know what pressure there is to finish the hexagram process and to move on to the next foundation, to keep the cycle of life moving. Now, there is nothing more chaotic than a 6-3. Nothing. It's obvious that the 6-3 is going to live out in its first Saturn cycle a 3-3 phase. Now, we've seen this with the 3-6. Now, with the 3-6, it's a different process because, of course, that's the 3 personality. It's the consistent personality throughout their process. But the consistent personality of the 6-3 is that it's going to shift. It's going to start off as a 3-3, and then it's going to, leap onto the roof. 6-3s don't even need a ladder. They have so much going on in those first 28 years, that they trampoline their way to the top. They just get out of the way. But think about the pressure and the chaos of having a 3-3 cycle in your first 28 years. Everything is trial and error. The conscious, the unconscious, this is the pinball wizard at work. Deaf, dumb, and blind, and pushed in every direction. Now, obviously, out of that can come a deep, deep experiential recognition. No other profile is designed to meet as many experiences as the 6-3. No other profile. They're here to sample completely the hexagram before they leave it and go on to the next. In other words, this is the last gasp. And of course, in that last gasp, what we get to at the unconscious level, it never leaves them, is that, yes, I've gotten to the end of this hexagram, but so what? There has to be something else. There has to be something else. 6-3s invented incarnation. There has to be something else. There has to be something else. So that's their whole process in life. There has to be something else. Now, of course, the ideal of the 6-3 is that while they're on the roof of the house, they find it. In other words, they find what they can accept as being an example. And unlike the 6-2, when the 6-2 becomes an example, they are simply and totally involved in being themselves when they come off the roof. But the 6-3 cannot. When the 6-3 actually comes down off of that roof, they go right back into trial and error. They can never leave it. And they go back down into trial and error because they're looking for a new foundation. That's their job. You know, there was this San Francisco cartoonist. Anyway, I can't remember his name. I'd love to give him credit, but whatever. And it's a cartoon that has stayed with me for a very long time. It's a very beautiful thing. There's this enormous landscape of rubble. You know, it looks like World War 26. Huge rubble everywhere, cities burnt down, all kinds of stuff. There's this one guy. He's walking through all of this. He's the only human being there. He's got big, big bug eyes. And he's holding a portable TV set, and he's got the plug in one hand. You know? This is the 6-3. Eh? You know, the whole world can come to an end, and they're wandering around with their plug. Where do I plug in to get to what's next? How do I get to the next thing? That's their genetic direction. That's their whole thing. Now, of course, that can be very difficult for them. They don't get to have the same sanctity of the roof that the 6-2 does. No changing cross. Because changing crosses are different. These 6 changing crosses, as you've seen, there's not many changing cross people around. They're different. And though they have similarities, whether those similarities are going to be linked through the personality or whatever, they have similarities with the foundation, but they're different. That 6-3, because of the 3 underneath, has a very different experience, because even at the end of the Saturn cycle, when they go up onto the roof of the house, they can't stay there. There's always somebody coming along and bringing a ladder, an elevator, an escalator, a slide, you know, a parachute. There's always somebody saying, come on off the roof. Come on down here. We have something new for you. And of course, built into that 6-3 is this optimism that maybe they really have it. And maybe if I come down and I see what that is, you know, I don't have to be up here on this roof. And then, of course, they come down and they find out that it doesn't work. And they say, it doesn't work, none of this works. I'm going back up on the roof. They go back up on the roof. And the moment they're back up on the roof, there's somebody else in their face saying, hey, look, I've got this wonderful thing. And their unconscious says, let's try it. I mean, they're helpless. The unconscious says, all right, yes, okay, I'm coming back down. I'll try it again. So, whereas the 6-2, you can see their curve. You know, they have their chaos, bumpity. They go up onto the roof. They stay there for, you know, a long time. They stay there for 20, 23 years. They have this holiday up there where they get rich, you know, and then they have to come down. And then the 6-3, they have this chaos. They go up on the roof, they come down. They go up on the roof, they come down. They go up on the roof, they come down. They go up on the roof, they come down. That's a process. And of course, that's the mechanism of their genes. Their genes are saying, we have to come down, we have to come down, we have to come down. We have to be in the world. We have to move to the next foundation. We can't stay up here on the roof because this hexagram has to go somewhere. They can be real driving forces. But it takes them a long time in life to find what they can truly trust. Long time. The 6-2 finds trust up on the roof and finds it in the healing process of its first 10 or 11 years on the roof. But the 6-3 doesn't have that grace period. They're constantly being pulled, and they cannot escape that pull. They must go down. That is their job. And of course, for them, it is only the optimism of the post-Saturn phase that keeps them alive. That 6th line of theirs says, okay, it was another experience. This doesn't work. You have the role model martyr. And in the first 30 years of their life, you've got the martyr. You know, that's 2 crosses that you hang on instead of 1. You know, maybe 1 in front, 1 in back. That's the martyr. And it is the oh me, oh my configuration. How easy it is for them in their pessimism to really think that they are victims. You see, they never belong to the hexagram. it's very easy for them to feel like they're alone. Nobody really cares. They're at the end of something. They're actually leaving it behind. And because they're leaving it behind, they're not even connected to those in the hexagram in any kind of deep way. They're trying to get away from it. They go up onto the roof to create the distance in order to be able to jump into something new. Because they have to continue this genetic life process. However, if they go through those first years with the martyr and that deep pessimism that grows out of that, they're going up onto the roof. These can be very, very angry people on the roof. These are the kind of people who stand up on the roof and look out at the crowd below and scream at them. I mean, this is not your holy prophet up there who says, "Come to me, my children." This is the mad person standing up there on the roof saying, "Get away!" You know this movie, what was it called? Oh, damn. It's not my day for those things. It was this guy standing out of this window who kept on screaming, "Fuck everybody." Network. Right, thank you. The hell with all of you. This is the classic 6'3", standing up on the roof and cursing at everybody. Right? And of course, you have to understand that not everybody is gifted with that potential to let it out. And if you're screaming at everybody inside and it's not coming out, how devastating that can be to your body, how devastating that can be to your health. This is not an easy role. At the same time, as I say that, remember, it's not tougher than anybody else's. And that's important to keep in mind. I mean, let's not give the martyrs their due. Eh? Oh, poor me. Let's massage them and make them feel better. Don't get caught in that movie. Eh? Doesn't work. Doesn't work. No sympathy from the devil today. Eh? You can see what they're like. They're the administrating anarchists. Isn't that wonderful? They tell you what to destroy. They do. I mean, that's actually a very profound statement. They really do. They tell you what to burn down. They tell you what to destroy. These are little kids that say to their friend, "Put that bush on fire." And it's their little friend that gets punished when the house burns down. Eh? Go ahead. Set it on fire. Yeah. They're a double anarchist in their first Saturn cycle. Never belong to an organization that would have you as a member. Never belong to an organization that would have you as a member. This is a binary rejection of being organized in any way. Don't put these children into the Boy Scouts or the Girls Club or, these horrible things, because this 6 will go nuts in that kind of a situation. They are anarchists. What are you doing to me? You're locking me into all of this and none of it works. These are children. Let them be. These are the kind of kids that if they're lucky enough to have parents that are totally disinterested in them, they do really well. No joke. Totally disinterested in them. Because that's their opportunity to be really left alone with all of that. It's wonderful for them. The moment that they have these deeply concerned parents, who want them to be involved in this and that, and they are anarchists and they break bonds, this is, therapy and training. They get pushed into all kinds of horrible situations. They don't belong there. But they need to be left alone. Let them go through their trial and error. Let them go through as a loner in their own process. They will get out of that. And if they know that that's a healthy process for them, that there's nothing wrong with them, that they don't have to feel uncomfortable by the way in which others look at them and speculate about them, then they can really be healthy. After all, it's a very valuable role, and it's an important role to be filled out. And unlike the 6-2, the trial and error, the experiencing of life in the 6-3 never ends. They stay out there. Oh yeah, they go up and down on the roof, but basically they stay out there. They stay connected. They do not have the same disconnect. As a matter of fact, The disconnect of the 6-3 is personal and not general. And that's the real difference in them in terms of the way the unconscious changes this on-the-roof disconnection. Basically what happens with the 6-3 is that it tends to be the result of the other. Somebody bumps into them, pulls them down off of the roof. Now what they do is they disconnect from that person when the experience doesn't work. They don't disconnect from the experience generally. They just say, no more with that one. I've been disturbed, but it's okay. I'm going back up on my roof until the next one comes along. And they go through that process. So it tends to be much more personal. After all, the theme of bonds made and broken, it tends to be geared in that direction. But like all 6s, when they are on the roof, they are able administrators. They do have this capacity out of experience to be able to guide others. But they don't have the same career curve as the 6-2. The 6-2 has nearly 25 years of stability in their Saturn to Chiron, in which to develop their material strengths in life. However, the 6-3 is constantly being pulled down off of the roof. That means they can be pulled out of their job, they can be pulled out of their discipline, they can be pulled into new things all the time. So what happens to them is that they may not be able to develop a consistent way to materially look after themselves. In other words, they can have a career in which they can be quite successful, but 6-3s will leave anything. You know, they can truly be pulled off into anything. And then they can end up having lost the benefits of their seniority or their time or whatever and have to start fresh with something else. So they don't have the same kind of career curve. In other words, they have to recognize that it's important for them to have something that's relatively consistent in their life that can help them maintain themselves. You know, nothing illustrates the binary of the 6-3 better than the pessimism and optimism that's there in the perspective and the memory. This early double pessimism leads to the personality's optimism, and that personality's optimism is what saves the 6-3 from its chaos. Optimism is a beautiful thing in a chaotic world. It's a beautiful thing. It's one of the great fears that we have. You see, logic only protects us so much. Mutation is always there. The 6-3 is one of these ultimate mutative forces. They have deep mutative capacity when they're young, the double 3, the trial and error that can lead to so many things. But they never give it up in their lives. And they are the transition force that mutates away from one hexagram and opens up the possibility of entering into another. Remember, all 6-3s, the next profile is the 1-3. I mean, it never stops. It's endless. You go around the wheel and it's just endless. Every 6-3 is going to become a 1-3. They know that deep inside in their mechanism. They understand that they are the ultimate transition place. They're going to move to a whole new structure. They actually mirror what juxtaposition is. That is, this movement from one cross to another. What juxtaposition brings is the change of the unconscious arm. And what the 6-3 brings is the change of the conscious arm. The next step to the 1-3, it's the conscious, the personality Sun Earth that's going to change. So they have a very dynamic role in this life. Now, one of the things to understand about 6-3s is that all third lines, because they get bumped into, are open to being infected. A lot of 6-3s do not get a chance to live out their full life. I don't want to scare anybody, but after all, I'm good at shocking. And I want you to take that in proper perspective. But as a generalization, if the 6-3 does not know how to enter into its relationships correctly, all third lines are open to being infected. That is, people bump into you. Things bump into you. And many 6-3s, because of the chaos of their lives, going up and down, that they often get things in this life that shorten their life. Now, I'm not talking about genetic diseases or things like that. I'm talking about, they're the kind of people that have an unusual experience and they go to Peru or wherever. They go to some jungle experience and they end up getting some bizarre microbe inside of them and drop dead. And it's something that's very important for them and very important for the parents of 6-3 children, particularly in that first 28-year cycle, because they're going to be very vulnerable. And it's one of those things that they need to learn hygiene at a very early age. In other words, to know how to look after themselves, to know how to keep their bodies clean. These are the kind of children that have to learn to wash their hands. I mean, any 3 child, eh? I mean, my son, I insist on that. Many times a day I will tell him, go wash your hands. I ask him because he's a generator, but the reality is that, it's very important. He has to wash his hands because as a 3, you take in so many things from the world. If you have a 3 baby, that 3 baby is very different from any of the other lines. The 4 baby sticks something in its mouth that has something on it, nothing happens. Nothing. But the 3 baby, chances are they're going to get something. Remember, they're mutative forces. They're open to these changes within them through having things bump into them. Look after their health when they're children. You see, who you engage with, who you enter into any kind of interaction with. As a 3rd line, you always have to recognize your vulnerability. You always have to be careful that you're entering into relationships correctly so you are healthy in that relationship and you're dealing with people that are not there to make you unhealthy. One of the most common things about the 6-3 is the way they actually get up onto the roof and not get disturbed is by becoming ill. It's very common for them to just be ill. Don't bother me, I'm sick today. And of course that can be both real and psychosomatic in that sense. I mean, it can be just something that they generate for themselves as a form of protection. So they won't be pulled down again, that at least they're going to have this break. Now obviously if you have a lot of chaos in the first part of the life, that there's all kinds of problems inherent in that can lead to all kinds of sickness in the 6-3 because they are more open to all of these things than any other profile. So pay attention to whenever you see that around you. Again, you're not going to see a lot of them, but they are here. I think we have 2 here in the room. So, you can see that they're there in our population. And the moment that you see that in young people, you really have to do what you can to help them and protect them. They need that. The aspire to role of objectivity, you can see that their direction in the beginning of life is sustainment. So you've got a double sustainment that rules for them in the first 28 years. I mean, the gods are cruel, but the gods are also kind. It's one of the things that you learn very quickly about being a binary, is that there's a good and bad to everything. The 3s are given a deep, deep, deep potential and equipment genetically to sustain. As I said, they are often admired for the very fact that they don't give up. They can stay with things. And by staying with things, I mean that they can move from experience to experience, crisis to crisis. You can't keep them down forever. You can kill them. The beauty of sustainment is that it leads to objectivity. I mean, that's the thing to really understand. And the beauty of the 6-3 is that they have a deep, penetrating objectivity. They are able to sustain experiences that the 6-2 will drop out of much quicker. The 6-2 will have the same thing in the first 28 years of its life, but it'll get out of it quicker because it's got a hermit unconscious. But the 6-3 will go there to the bitter end. It takes in the whole movie, and then it gets out. But that also means that by the time they get to a point of their potential objectivity on the roof, you can see that objectivity can be very piercing because they've taken the not work experience right down to the whole thing. Remember, it's their job after all. They're the last personality profile. It's their job to make sure that nothing was missed along the way, that everything is checked out. So they end up checking out all of that stuff to make sure that none of it was missed. And then they're free to go look for something new, to go find the next hexagram through its trial and error process, through its sustainment, to carry it through, to continue the life process. And you can notice something. There's not a lot of 4-1s to take us from the personal to the transpersonal. There are not a lot of 6-3s that keep the genetic movement going, and that the 6-3s themselves are subject to early death. We better look after them. And the way we look after them is to educate the young. When you meet an adult 6-3, it is one of those things to recognize that they need a great deal of support in their process. Not the martyr sympathy that says, oh, poor you, but the support that says, tell me about all that stuff. Tell me about it. After all, that's what they're here for. They're here to be representatives of the closing of a sequence. They are wonderful guides in that sense. They can give us a great deal of information about many things. They can illuminate us. So it's important that when you're dealing with the adult 6-3, you're usually dealing with a crash victim. You know, you're dealing with somebody who has just been martyred over and over and over again. And they need to recognize that that way of experiencing life, that's their richness. It's their treasure. And it's a treasure that will be honored by others the moment that they begin to recognize it themselves, that it's a treasure, that it's a wonderful gift. And for them to see that it's not about staying on the roof. You see, the 6-2 loves the roof, but will accept that it has to go off eventually. But the 6-3, because it's always being pulled back down, keeps on thinking that it hasn't had enough time up there. You know, couldn't I have 10 years? You know, I'll go back down after. They have to. That's their whole thing. And the moment they understand that they have to be here in the world, that they can take their little breaks, that they can find their way to go up onto their roof temporarily, you know, to have a chance to breathe, to have a chance to go through their process, but that we need them back in the world. We need them with their wisdom. We need to see where they're hunting for things. There are examples, after all, and there are examples that leads us into new territory. They're the ones that play our Joan of Arc and our Moseses. You know, they can really do that. And at the same time, you're dealing with characters that have enormous problems in their personal life. In other words, you know, is when they're clear, they're wonderful guides for us into the world of trial and error and the world of experience. And that's where we belong. It's where we belong. It's the ultimate step. It's what the transpersonal is here to bring to you. The left angle says, be practical in this life. If you're practical in this life, life is rich. And the sixth line personality says to you, look, life is rich. Find out what's practical because things don't work. And the fact that things don't work means that some things will not work for you. Find out what works for you. I'll help you. I'll tell you what doesn't work. And then we can all live out what's practical and works together. That's the whole point of the transpersonal, is to get everybody to see, hey, I had a woman on an airplane once. She said to me, what do you know, I love Americans, with this directness of theirs. She said to me, and what do you do for a living? And I said, I tell people it's okay. And she didn't talk to me for the rest of the flight, and it was transatlantic. That was wonderful. That's what the transpersonal does. It says, look, it really is okay. You know, be practical. Recognize that things don't work. Don't get upset. We're actually going to move to something new. Everything's okay. We're all in line. It's perfect. That's their job. And if we nurture them like we nurture all the others, if we nurture them properly, then we all get to benefit from that experience. We get to find those practical things in our life. We get to benefit from the wisdom of those who know things that do not work. We get to see that life does not have to be filled with resistance. It's not necessary. And then you get to see the beauty of what it is, to live out your geometry, to be what I am, what all of you can be, which is living mythology. And it's not because of my role or who I am. It's because of the fact that each and every one of us are just that. We are mythologies. We're deeply connected in the fractals to all the gods, to all the godheads, to all the sources. You give them any name you want, it doesn't matter. And we each live out our unique purpose. And that purpose is of value whether we're in the life for a moment or we're in the life for 90 years. It doesn't make a difference. Each of us are essential components in the whole. And the moment you live out your nature, the moment you stop being involved with your life, the moment you stop trying to control it and interfere with it, you get to see your mythology. You get to see the beauty I see every time I look at somebody's chart. It's just there. We are all here to experience that. Not a few whatevers someplace here or there. It's for all of us. To be awake is really mundane. It's really mundane. I want you to understand that. It's what we're supposed to be. It's not some high exalted state that we have to suffer to get to. That's nonsense. We just haven't had the education until now. It's easy to be awake. Live out your type. Live it out for 7 years. You'll be as awake as Buddha. And then you get to see your mythology. And that's not spiritual, and it's not a belief system, and it's not hokey pokey. And it sure as hell ain't schmaltz, not for me. It's just the truth. That's all. And you can find that out like everything else in human design by living out its logic. Live out the experiment yourself. And the moment you live out the experiment day by day, month by month, year by year, you'll see that there's a real change that takes place in your nature. It's not the change that you're making happen. It's the change of you becoming yourself, evolving into what you're meant to be in this life. And then the benefits derived in that. The benefit of what you can be for others in your life, for children that are around you, your own or others, it doesn't make any difference. The beauty that is there in having relationships with others in which you know each other, where there is no challenge to someone to be something other than what they are. That's the real expression of love in this life, is to accept and respect somebody for what they are. In that way, we're all allies. In that way, we get to live out the unity of all of this.